It is February 22nd, 2024, and this is not a book review because who has not heard of John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men? Very thin. Anyone that's going to read this probably already has. And it's weird that I had previously read Grapes of Wrath, and I remembered a story from high school. I'm going to tell that in a second. And I'm not sure if I had remembered the story from high school incorrectly or correctly, but part of it is based on this being read in elementary school. And it flashed back to me when I started reading this. I thought I was reading this for the first time, and it dawned on me that I had read this in elementary school. So it's weird the things that you forget over your lifetime, and then they come back when you see something in print. So the story I have for you is in high school, I did not read The Grapes of Wrath. In my English class, I was assigned Grapes of Wrath to read. And I don't know if I started the book and it had some GD references in there and I didn't like it, or what I think is the case, I remembered this book subconsciously being a Steinbeck book. And at the time, when I flashed back to that high school memory, I believed that I was reading the beginning of it and saw GD in there a bunch of times and didn't want to read it. But I think in reality, I had told her I've already read a Steinbeck as a kid. This one has quite a few of those in there. And I don't like reading that if I can get around it. But that said, I reread Grapes, not reread, but I read Grapes of Wrath last year, and it's a great book. And this also is very good. It's more of a novella, it's not a novel. Like I said, it has a lot of GD in it, which I don't like, but it's powerful, it's depressing. The funny thing about it is, if you grew up watching Bugs Bunny, there was a set of cartoons, and I think it was Bugs Bunny, where the one dopey character would say, okay, George, and it's clearly the guy from this book being mimicked in the cartoon form. But anyway, back to the high school story. So Miss Allen was her name, my high school teacher, very nice lady. And I told her I wasn't going to read The Grapes of Wrath because it had a lot of GD reference, or perhaps I thought it did. And she kind of went to the administrators and told them, and they basically at the beginning were going to try to heavy hand me and say, no, if you don't do it, you don't get a good grade. But she actually went to bat for me, and she said, I can give you another assignment that you can do rather than that one. And when we do group discussions and this and that, just stay out of them and do the other stuff. And pretty much what I got to do was sit at her desk and just sit around and do nothing during those periods of time. And I didn't really have to read a different book or anything. And I think she appreciated that I had a character position of not wanting to do something that was against my standards. But that said, I've gotten older and I still don't like seeing those terms. But if it's a good piece of literature and I can learn something from it, ultimately I'll read it and try not to absorb those words and phrases too much, if that's possible. The reason I do it that way is because I looked up last year before I got Grapes of Wrath, because you always hear how good of a book it is, and I looked up, should a Christian read The Grapes of Wrath? And a lot of people, probably more than less, said yes. So even though it's got a lot of darker things in it, you still could learn a lot from it. And that was a really good book. This book is not as good as Grapes of Wrath. It's powerful, depressing, dark, really striking. Not sure if you learn as much as you do in The Grapes of Wrath. I don't believe you do. But one thing you could learn out of it is that some people that are born with a brain deficiency, like the guy in this book, maybe they can't control themselves and they need mental health counselings and things of that nature to keep them in check. That would be maybe the main theme of this. And the other reason I do these vlogs is at the end of the year, I like to remember what I've read for the year so I can do a summary and figure out if I've been efficient. Have I read enough literature? Am I slacking off? Because I like to force myself to set goals. And sometimes I read one book at a time. Sometimes I read up to 7 is the most I've done at one time. And like with the James Bond series I just finished, each book was kind of like you need to be focused on the one book at a time. But with some of the things I'm reading right now, they can tend to get a little bit boring. And what happened was I started reading the Mabinogion, which I'm still on. I'm up to page 150. And it's Welsh folklore stories. And man, it can get pretty stale. So I threw this one in there to break it up. And I also did the one that I prior reviewed, which was Marcus Aurelius's. Can't remember the name of the book, but it was Marcus Aurelius. And that was pretty good, but it's real short. And it's cool to throw these shorter books in there with the long, drudgy ones. Although this book isn't particularly long, but it is drudgy. I'm up to 150, and it's like 200 and something, 250 or something like that. 226, not as bad as I thought. So hopefully I'll be done with Mabinogion soon. Like I said, this was not of Mice and Men book review. It's really good, really short. You can mow it down fast. If you don't like depressing stuff, maybe don't read it. But done with Steinbeck. That's my second one. And looking at his bibliography, I think I want to read Tortilla Flat. And what else? Maybe The Moon is Down, Cannery Row, East of Eden, probably, The Winter of Our Discontent. So probably quite a few, because so far he's been solid, and I like to be informed. Pick what is considered to be the best of these great authors' literature and try to absorb some of their philosophies and things, and become more rounded. Because ultimately, we're on this ball spinning around at high rate of speed, and you really get a sense of someone else when you read a book more than you do just talking to people and things like that. So, and I like older books. You like to see how we've gone forward over time and what we've learned or not learned, and maybe what I can learn from people of the past, so I could hopefully know a little bit more. I guess one of the themes of this thing, in addition to providing mental health counseling for people with brain problems, injuries, and just brain issues, I guess, would be like tolerance and trying to understand other people's struggles, I suppose. Because left unchecked, it can go real south. The other thing I guess you could get out of this, just like Grapes of Wrath, is the challenges of people in financial instability, and how it's real easy if you have resources to look at people without and say, oh, look at that guy, he's a mess. I mean, anybody that's doing fairly well can easily do that, as they feel like, hey, I'm doing better than that guy. But unless you walked a mile in their shoes, maybe you don't know what their life is really like. And this gives a glimpse of, perhaps, I don't know if he based this off of anyone he met or not. I should probably look that up, but maybe. Okay, that's my random thoughts on Of Mice and Men.